Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Entrepreneurship for English Major course with me, Larissa Daniela. I'm the English major lecturer from Jakarta International University in Indonesia. This course will be conducted both in Indonesian and in English. Um, okay, so we have come to the last chapter of this course. This is the chapters 12 or lecture 12. So here we go. Let's say that you are done pitching your business to your clients. However, I believe that the process didn't always go smoothly. You have to realize that business can go up and down. There is a real challenge in developing new venture startup, which is to survive and to grow. There is a real challenge. In order to survive and grow, you need to have a clear understanding of the critical factors for selecting ventures, the no reasons for venture failure, and an effective evaluation process. So, um, kita sudah bahas semuanya dari chapter 1 sampai 11 tentang apa namanya tentang entrepreneurship, terutama yang berkaitan dengan English major. Kita juga sudah bahas berbagai macam contoh bisnis atau contoh usaha yang bisa dilakukan dengan background Anda sebagai English major, yang bahkan bisa dimulai. You can even start it when you are still a university student, gitu. Jadi bisa dilakukan dari sejak Anda masih mahasiswa. Nah, dari semuanya itu setelah let's say Anda sudah coba untuk approach kliennya, you have approached your targeted client, you have done the presentation to them, you have even started your your business. Yeah, you have been successfully attracted your potential client to be your customer. Itu let's say itu sudah terjadi. Nah, ini saatnya kita bahas beberapa hal tentang bagaimana sih gitu memilih bisnis yang tepat gitu ya supaya tidak gagal begitu ya, atau kira-kira akan ada challenges apa saja sih atau hal-hal apa saja yang harus diantisipasi supaya bisnisnya tidak gagal, supaya berjalan dengan baik. Well, there's nothing perfect, of course. There is nothing going smoothly, but at least you know from the beginning what you have to anticipate when you start your business. Begitu. Okay, so here we go. There will be 4 sections that we are going to discuss right now. The first one is about the pitfalls in selecting new ventures. The second one is critical factors for new venture development. The third one is why new ventures fail. And lastly is pitfalls to avoid in planning. Okay, so let's discuss them one by one. The first one is pitfalls in selecting new ventures. Well, the first key area of analysis is the selection of the new venture. This stage of transition from an idea potential venture can be most critical for understanding new venture development. The following here in this page are the 6 of most important pitfalls commonly encountered in the process of selecting a new venture. The first one, lack of objective evaluation. Lack of objective evaluation. Okay, for this point, many entrepreneurs are lacked of objectivity. Engineers and technically trained people are particularly easy to fall in love with an idea for a product or a service. They seem unaware of the need for the supervision and maintenance they have to do in their project or in the daily operations to maintain their professional work. The way to avoid this pitfall is to understand deeply about all ideas by studying and investigating them one by one. The second one is no real insight into the market. Well, many entrepreneurs do not realize the importance of developing a marketing approach and laying the foundation for a new venture. Also, they do not understand the life cycle that must be considered when introducing a new product or service. No product will be instantly profitable. This is what you have to highlight, okay? Nor does its success last forever. Entrepreneurs must not only project the life cycle of the new product, they must also recognize that introducing the product at the right time is important to its success. Timing is critical. Action taken too soon or too late will often result in failure. So you have to pay attention to this one. Okay, the third one is inadequate understanding of technical requirements. Well, the development of a new product often involves new techniques. Failure to anticipate the technical difficulties related to developing or producing a product can sink a new venture. Entrepreneurs cannot be too thorough when studying the project before initiating it. Encountering unexpected technical difficulties frequently poses time consuming and costly problems. Okay, the next one is poor financial understanding. A common difficulty with the development of a new product is an overly optimistic estimate of the funds required to carry the project of completion. Sometimes entrepreneurs are ignorant of cost or are victims of inadequate research and planning. Quite often, they tend to underestimate development cost by wide margins. It is common to estimate less of half from the what is eventually required. Okay, the next one is lack of venture uniqueness. A new venture should be unique. Uniqueness is the special characteristics and design concept that draw the customer to the venture, to your venture, which should provide performance or service that is superior to competitive offerings. The best way to ensure customer awareness of differences is the best way to ensure customer awareness of differences between the company's product and competitor's product is through product differentiation. Pricing becomes less of a problem when the customer sees the product as superior to its competitors. A product that is unique is a significant way can gain the advantage of differentiation. If I may give you a little example, sering sekali kalau di Indonesia itu banyak orang jual makanan hanya karena itu makanannya sedang viral gitu. So in Indonesia there are so many like food and beverages sellers sell certain menus or certain foods or drinks just because it's currently going viral. So they just follow they just follow the trend. Well, that's not wrong, but that kind of thing won't last forever if you cannot maintain the quality of your product because everyone sells the same thing. Everyone sells the same thing. There is no differentiation in this one. So your product is not unique. Well, yes, it's important for you to follow the trend, but you still have to find your own uniqueness in between this whole trends. Begitu. Okay, so lastly, it's about the ignorance of legal issues. Business is subject to many legal requirements. One of the need to make the workplace safe for employees. A second is to provide reliable and safe products and services. A third is the necessity for patents, trademarks, and copyrights to protect one's inventions and products. When these legal issues are overlooked, major problems can result. So, yeah, you somehow really have to invest in this part as well. Okay, the next one is about critical factors for new venture development. A number of critical factors are important for new venture assessment. In most cases, however, such a questionnaire approach is too general. The assessment must be tailored or must be made for the specific venture. for your venture. So you cannot just copy paste it from other sources without adjusting that with your own needs. The new venture goes through three specific phases: pre startup, startup, and post startup. The pre startup phase begins with an idea for the venture and ends when the doors are opened for business. The startup phase commences with the initiation of sales activity and the delivery of products and services, and ends when the business is firmly established and beyond short term threats to survival. The post startups phase lasts until the venture is terminated or the surviving organizational entity is no longer controlled by the entrepreneur. Okay. Um, yeah, still about the critical factors for a new venture development. Well, here in this page, we're looking at some critical factors for a new development of entrepreneur. Um, it's There are five here. The first one is uniqueness, and then investment, and also the growth of sales and a product availability, and lastly is customer availability. And we are going to discuss them one by one. Okay, so the first one is uniqueness. A new venture's range of uniqueness can be considerable, extending from fairly routine to highly non routine. What separates the routine from the non routine venture is the amount of innovation required during the pre startup period. This distinction is based on the need for new process technology to produce services or products and on the need to service the new market segments. Venture uniqueness is further characterized by the length of time of non routine venture will remain non routine. For instance, will new products or new technologies or new markets be required on continuing basis, or will the venture be able to settle down after the startup period and use existing products, technologies, and markets? Well, you may think about these questions. Okay, the second is about investment. The capital investment required to start a new venture can vary considerably. In some industries, less than $100,000 may be required, whereas in other industries, millions of dollars are necessary. Moreover, in some industries, only large scale startup are feasible. For example, in the publishing industry, one can start a small venture that can remain small and grow into a larger venture. Well, by contrast, an entrepreneur attempting to break into the airline industry will need a considerable upfront investment. Another finance related critical issue is the extent and timing of funds needed to move through the venture process. To determine the amount of needed investment, entrepreneurs must answer questions such as these, like the first one: will industry growth be sufficient to maintain break even sales to cover a high fixed cost a high fixed cost structure during the startup period? The second, do the principal entrepreneurs have access to substantial financial reserves to protect a large initial investment? And the third, do the entrepreneurs have the appropriate contrast to take advantage of various environmental opportunities? And the last one is, do the entrepreneurs have both industry and entrepreneurial track records that justify the financial risk of a large scale startup? Okay, so yeah, you better think about this for questions. Okay, growth of sales. The growth of sales through the startup phase is another critical factor. Key questions are as follows. Um, First, what is the growth pattern anticipated for the new venture sales and profits? Second, are sales and profits expected to grow slowly or level off shortly after the startup? And the third one, are large profits expected at some point with only small or moderate sales growth? Or are both high sales growth and high profit growth likely? The last one, or will initial profits be limited with eventual high profit growth over a multi-year period? Well, in answering these questions, it is important to remember that most ventures fit into one of the three following classifications. The first one, lifestyle ventures. This venture appear to have independence, autonomy, and control as their primary driving forces. Neither large sales nor profits are deemed important beyond providing a sufficient and comfortable living for the entrepreneur. Well, the second, in small profitable ventures, financial considerations play a major role. Autonomy and control also are important in the sense that the entrepreneur does not want the venture sales or the employment to become so large that he or she must let go the equity or an ownership position, thus give up control over cash flow and profits. Well, which it is hoped will be substantial. And lastly is the high growth ventures. Well, in high growth ventures, significant sales and profit growth are expected to the extent that it may be possible to attract venture capital money and funds raised through public and private placements. Okay, now we move on to the product availability. The essential point to the success of any venture is product availability. The availability of good and service at the time the venture opens its doors. Some ventures have problems in this regard because the product or service is still in development and needs further modifications or testing. Other ventures find that because they bring their product to market too soon, it must be recalled for further work. A typical example is a software firm that rushes the development of its product and is then besieged by customers who find bugs in the program. Lack of product availability in finished form can affect the company's image and its bottom line. Okay, the last one is about customer availability. If the product is available before the venture is started, the likelihood of venture success is considerably better than it would be otherwise. Similarly, venture risk is affected by customer availability for startup. At one end, the risk continuum is the situation where customers are willing to pay cash for the products or services before it is being delivered. At the other hand of the continuum is the enterprise that gets started without knowing exactly who will buy its product. A critical consideration is how long it will take to determine who the customers are, as well as their buying habits. As one research noted, the decision to ignore the market is extremely risky one. After all, there are two fundamental criteria for entrepreneurial success. The first is having a customer who is willing to pay you a profitable price for a product or a service. The second is that you must actually produce and deliver the product or service. The further a venture removes itself from certainty about these two rules, the greater the risk and the greater the time required to offset this risk as the venture moves through the pre startup and startup periods. Okay. Why new ventures fail? This is what I want you to consider and pay attention. Well, every year, many millions of dollars are spent on starting new enterprises. Many of these newly established businesses vanish within 1 or 2 years, and only small percentage succeed. Most studies have found that the factors underlying the failure of new ventures are, well, within the control of the entrepreneur in most cases. One research study examined 250 high tech firms and found three major categories of causes the failure: product and market problems, financial difficulties, and managerial problems. Okay, we'll see the first one: product or market problem. Well, product or market problems involve the following factors. The first one is poor timing. A premature entry into the marketplace contributed to the failure in 40% of the cases studied. The second is product design problems. Although this may be related to timing, product design and development became key factors at earlier stages of the venture. When the essential makeup of the product and services changed, failure resulted. The third one is inappropriate distribution strategy. Whether it was based on commissioned sales representatives or direct sales at trade shows, the distribution strategy had to be geared toward the product and customer. The third one is unclear business definition. Uncertainty about the exact business they were in caused these firms to undergo constant change and to lack stabilization. And lastly is over reliance on one customer only. This resulted in a failure to diversify and brought about the eventual bankrupt of some of the firms. Okay, the next one is about financial difficulties. The financial difficulties category involved the following factors: initial undercapitalization. Undercapitalization contributed to failure in 30% of the case studies. The second, assuming debt too early. Some of the firms attempted to obtain debt financing too soon and in too large amount. This led to debt service problems. And lastly is the venture capital relationship problems. Differing goals, visions, and motivations of the entrepreneur and the venture capitalist resulted in problems for the enterprise. So be careful with these points, guys. Okay, the next one is the managerial problems. Managerial problems involve two important factors. The first one is concept of a team approach. The following problems associated with the managerial team were found. The first one, hirings and promotions on the basis of nepotism rather than qualifications. The second is poor relationships with parent companies and venture capitalists. The third, founders who focused on their weaknesses rather than on their strength. Well, although weakening the company, they supposedly were building their skills. Number four, incompetent support professionals. For example, attorneys who were unable to read contracts and collect on court judgments that already have been made. Wow, this is dangerous. Yeah, I hope that you will never have any problem with legal problems or with the law. Okay. The next one is human resource problems. Inflated owner ego, employee related concerns, and control factors were all problems that led to business failure. The study also revealed such interpersonal problems as kickbacks and subsequent firings that resulted in an almost total loss of customers. Number two, decide on the part of a venture capitalist in one case and on the part of a company president in another. And number three is verbal agreements between the entrepreneur and the venture capitalist that were not honored. And lastly, um, protracted lawsuit around the time and discontinuance. So, the differing perceptions of new venture failure was examined in another study conducted by researchers Andrew Zak- Zakara- Zakarakis. Sorry for pronouncing it wrong. Dale Mayer and Julio De Castro. Internal and external factors were identified and ranked by a simple venture capitalist as well as a sample of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs attributed new venture failure in general to internal factors. Well, mm, yeah, um, 89% of the time. In the same vein, venture capitalists overwhelmingly attributed the failure of most new ventures to internal causes, like 84%. Okay, so um, yes, this one. So after we discuss, yeah, the three majors of venture failures in the previous pages, well, there are also internal and external problems of the new ventures. Let's discuss from the internal new ventures problem first. So, the role of the company leadership is an important internal business factor. Your leadership style and the styles of other company management impact organizational culture. Companies often provide formal structure or direction with mission and vision statements. These are common problems from the internal business. So these are the problems, the internal problems like facilities or equipments, inventory control, cash flow, adequate capital, accounting systems, organizational structure, leadership, and human resources. So these are part of the internal problems that you have to anticipate if you want to build or you want to grow your venture into the bigger one. Okay, the next one is the external problems. One of the most critical external business factor is competition. Sorry. Whether you operate in a concentrated industry with a few major competitors or a large industry with many competitors, you need to know the competition. Many companies do competitive analysis to compare their offerings and prices to those of competitors. When developing business philosophies and products, it is helpful to use your strength in quality production, customer service, or operational efficiency to build competitive advantages that benefit your customers. So, here are the external problems of the new venture, like pricing, expansion, market knowledge, customer contract, competitors, market planning, product issues, and location. I guess I have delivered it in more detail in the previous chapter, so this is just the summary one. Okay, so the study assumed that the financial failure process was characterized by too much initial indebtedness and too little revenue financing. Furthermore, the study recognized the risks associated with the initial size of the venture being developed. Specific applications of the model of the entrepreneur and manager that can help you in developing your new venture included the following. The first one is role of profitability and cash flows. The entrepreneur and manager should ensure that the products are able to yield positive profitability and cash flows in the first years. The second is role of debt. The entrepreneur and manager should ensure that enough stakeholders, stockholders, capital is in the initial balance sheet to buffer future losses. And number three is combination of both. The entrepreneur and manager should not start a business if the share of stockholders' capital in the initial balance sheet is low, and if negative cash flows in the first years are probable. The third one and the fourth one is role of initial size. The entrepreneur and manager should understand that more probable the negative cash the I'm sorry. The entrepreneur and manager should understand that the more probable the negative cash flows and the larger the debt share in the initial balance sheet, the smaller the initial size of the business should be. Okay, and number five, role of velocity of capital. Well, the entrepreneur and the manager should not budget for the fast velocity of capital in the initial years if the risk of negative cash flow is high. More sales in comparison to capital results in more negative cash flows and poorer profitability. Number six is role of control. So, the entrepreneur and manager should monitor financial ratios from the first year, especially the cash flow to total debt ratio. Risky combinations of ratios, especially negative cash flows, a low stockholders and capital to total capital ratio, and a high velocity of capital should be monitored and compared with industrial standards. The entrepreneur, the entrepreneur should try to identify the reasons for poor ratios and pay special attention to keep profitability at the plant level with control ratios. Okay, and this one is the pitfalls to avoid in the planning. Here are some pitfalls in the business plan process that should be avoided and the solution for each problem. Okay, so the first pitfall is no realistic goals. Although this pitfall may sound self explanatory, the following indicators demonstrate how common and well disguised it can be. Lack of any attainable goals, lack of time frame to accomplish things, lack of priorities, and lack of action steps. One way to avoid these pitfalls is to set up a timetable of specific steps to be accomplished during a specific period. So, like you make a timetable, a certain work to do, and the deadline of it. Okay, pitfall two, failure to anticipate roadblocks. One of the most common pitfalls occurs when the entrepreneur is so immersed in his or her idea that objectivity goes out the window. In other words, the person does not recognize the possible problems that may arise. Indicators are no recognition of future problems, no admission of possible flaws or weaknesses in the plan, and no contingency or alternative plan. The best way to avoid this pitfall is to list the possible obstacles that may arise and the alternatives that state what might have to be done to overcome the obstacles. Okay, the third pitfall is no commitment or no dedication. Too many entrepreneurs appear to lack real commitment to their ventures. Although ventures may have started from a hobby or part time endeavor, entrepreneurs must be careful to avoid the impression that they do not take their venture seriously. Indicators are excessive procrastination, missed appointments, no desire to invest personal money, and the appearance of making a fast buck from a hobby or a whim. The easiest way to avoid this pitfall is to act quickly and be sure to follow up all professional appointments. Also, be ready and willing to demonstrate a financial commitment to the venture. Jadi memulai usaha dari sebuah hobi atau, hal yang Anda sukai atau hal yang Anda minati atau hal yang menurut Anda, Anda kuasai itu nggak apa-apa gitu ya, itu nggak apa-apa. Tapi ya harus komitmen gitu, harus, apa ya, harus di-maintain terus. Jadi nggak bisa kayak, "Ah, oke saya pengen ini sekarang, aduh karena lagi mood," gitu, "nanti kalau lagi nggak mood, aduh enggak deh," gitu, nggak bisa seperti itu, gitu ya. Jadi memang harus, mmm ya, kalau sudah dimulai ya harus serius gitu terjunnya. So, hati-hati sekali, pikirkan gitu ya, pikirkan dari berbagai faktor, berbagai hal ketika Anda memutuskan untuk mulai suatu bisnis gitu. Oke, the next one is the pitfall 4 is the lack of demonstrated experience or business or technical. Many investors weigh very heavily the entrepreneur's actual experience in a venture. So, it is important that entrepreneurs demonstrate what background their possesses. Because too many beginners attempt to promote ideas they really have no true knowledge of. They are doomed to fail simply because they are perceived as ignorant of specifics in the proposed business. Indicators are no experience in business, no experience in the specific area of the venture, lack of understanding of the industry in which the venture fits, and failure to convey a clear picture of how and why the venture will work and who will accept it. To avoid this pitfall, entrepreneurs need to give evidence of personal experience and background for the venture. If they are lack of specific knowledge or skills, they should obtain assistance from those who possess this knowledge or the skills. Demonstrating a team concept about those who help out also may be useful. And lastly, is no market needs or no market segment. I have discussed it in details, yeah, in the previous chapter. So I really hope that this kind of pitfall will never happen to your business. Okay, so the best and possible way to avoid this pitfall is to have a market segment specifically targeted and to demonstrate why and how the specific product or service will meet the needs or desires of this target group. The five pitfalls detailed here represent the most common points of failure entrepreneurs experience before their business plan ever gets reviewed. In other words, these critical areas must be carefully addressed before a business plan is developed. If these pitfalls can be avoided, the entire business plan will be written more carefully and those will be reviewed more thoroughly. This preparation helps entrepreneurs establish a solid foundation on which to develop an effective business plan. But you can also do this when you want to evaluate your business after a certain period of time. So after you do the what is the presentation or the business plan presentation, or after you do a certain period, after you run your business for a certain period of time, then you can evaluate using this whole points as well. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think that would be all of our discussion today, which also end the discussion of this course. So thank you very much for joining me in this 12 sessions. Hope that everything that I have delivered would be useful for you to start your career as an entrepreneur with your English major. If you have anything to share or you have anything to ask or to discuss, please feel free to contact me to my email. Thank you very much and see you in the next lecture session in the next course, in other course. Thank you and goodbye.